Hi, everybody. Dr. Dennis Ciccone from Ciccone Wellness. I'm here with Dr. Kasey today. We are so excited to talk to you about the four-phase approach to wellness. We're going to share a lot about her stories going through care. We're going to look at testing and then just answer any concerns that you may have and offer any insights we can to wellness. We're going to hop right into it. I'm going to switch to our next slide, which shares a little bit about Dr. Kasey, and I'm going to have her share a little bit about herself first, and then we'll get into it.
All
So,
right.
Dr. Kasey, the
Awesome.
floor is yours.
All right. Thanks, Dr. Dennis. So, hey, good morning, or actually good afternoon, everybody. So, I'm Dr. Kasey Kruer, and I have a crazy, convoluted health story, but one obviously that ended in a very positive outcome. So, just a little bit about me. I have a doctorate in clinical health psychology. I'm 48 years young, I like to say. I live in Florida, awesome state with my three boys. All my life, I've always been a very health minded athlete. And in December 2018, I was diagnosed with toxic mold. And I weigh about 135 pounds now, but I got down to 98 pounds. I was very, very sick. I honestly didn't know if I was going to survive it. And so I saw many, many, many health practitioners, both holistic and regular physicians, spent tons and tons and tons of money without a lot of success. And then about a year and a half ago, I met, I guess it's been about a year and a half ago now, Dr. Dennis, and really sort of fell in love with his approach because he talked really intensely about treating the whole symptom, not the whole symptom, the whole body, instead of just here's a band-aid for this symptom, here's a band-aid for this system, and looking at all of these entities, singly. And so to me, that was the first time that somebody really said, okay, we have to treat the whole body. We have to treat all of the systems all at once because they're all connected. And so I jumped on board. We did some testing. We did some supplements. I will say I was not perfect with the program, but had a lot of success. And so I'm here just to kind of encourage people that if you want somebody who is going to treat the whole body, who's going to treat you holistically, and then in the end, not have 50 different supplements you have to take for life, this is the program for you. So I'm actually in the process of, I am so sort of intrigued and really invested and passionate about this cause. I'm actually pursuing my own functional nutrition certification because of me and my toxic mold history. So I actually just passed my test a couple weeks ago, so I'm really excited. But again, this program is awesome. This will give you a lot of the tools that you need and a lot of things that maybe you have been searching for that haven't been able to find other places. So if you have questions for me too, like as we get towards the end, I'm happy to answer those questions. And the other thing we're going to show you are some of my labs, which is kind of cool to kind of see where we were and where I am now. So that's enough about me.
Awesome. I love it. And so many people that I talk to on calls that reach out to me, they've also spent a lot of money trying to navigate the process, whether it's on their own or with practitioners. And like when we say a lot of money, we're talking like 20, 30, 50, $100,000 to try to solve these
Yes.
problems.
I went to, so this is a very personal story to me, but I went to Mayo Clinic, which is supposed to be the best of the best of the best, right? And they told me it was all in my head, that there wasn't really anything wrong with me and that mold was really not a real diagnosis. And
Mhm.
very hard to hear when you're like, hey, I'm dying.
Right. And you were telling me like there's practitioners that were charging like 16 or 20,000 just for
Yes.
their
Yes.
services for the year on top of supplements. And I mean, you
Yes.
can go through our program for less than half of that with
Yes.
everything included,
I
and you
have
go through
spent
the
a
process
small
and get great
fortune. Yep.
results. So,
Yep.
that's the goal. So I think we set a good framework. So let's hop into the process now and why we get such great results. And um so this is the four phase approach. This is an approach that over the last 16 years of my practice, I've come to learn and start to navigate towards. And I go in this order because it matters so much. Like when Dr. Kasey was talking about different symptoms, lots of times doctors are going to approach you based off of what your symptoms are rather than trying to fix the systems, because once the systems are fixed, the symptoms start to disappear. And just so all of you know that are on here, we're so excited you're here. If you write in the chat, Dr. Casey or I in between will try to respond to those as well as possible. But even if it's something that we can't respond to and I see it, I will respond once we get off the call, because obviously I'm focused on doing the presentation. So just be interactive as possible. We love that interaction. But here's the approach. So we always start with the nervous system. The nervous system controls everything. So working virtually as I do, most of my clients, some are local, some are, all over the country. What I do is I help them if they need some help with their nervous system, to help them find a chiropractor that's near them that can help them to focus on that. The reality of everything is your brain controls everything. So if there's pressure on your nervous system and it's not functioning properly, then getting that pressure off the nervous system is just going to make everything better. I tell patients it's a lot like turning the light on. So if you've ever hired a contractor, they can still do the work and get it done with their flashlights and get things done. But it's going to be faster, more efficient, and more cost effective if the nervous system is functioning properly. So we don't do that work personally anymore. I used to do that for many years, but now I've moved towards this side, which I think was needed more in the industry. So now I refer that chiropractic side out if necessary. So that can certainly be part of your plan, and I can oversee that. And another great thing is it's amazing how great your chiropractors will do when they know that I'm looking at their notes and we're following up with those things. Like it just adds another element to the efficiency of what that process looks like. So I'd love to advocate on that side for you. The next is gut health. If your gut is not well, you are not going to be well, plain and simple. A majority of your immune system sits there. A majority of your neurotransmitters sit there, serotonin. It can affect your mood. It can affect how you're absorbing. If we don't get that fixed first, I could give you all of the supplements and recommendations in the world, but if you're not absorbing those things, then it doesn't really matter. You're not going to do well. So we got to make sure the gut is functioning properly and that you're in a good, healthy place to be able to absorb those things. That's why we start there as the next system. Then we look at the liver. The liver is the next important step because we need to focus on toxicity. Your liver all day long is dealing with detoxification processes. So if we then go in there, like I see a lot of other practitioners, like Dr. Kasey was talking about, mold specialists. I have a lot of people that called me that have worked with like mold and Lyme and some of these other conditions. Their practitioner will just focus on getting rid of the mold and Lyme. They'll get rid of those toxins, but now the liver is overwhelmed. Or when the body's trying to clear them, the gut wasn't restored properly. So what happens is that leaky gut phenomenon, it goes back into the blood, and now they're working against themselves, even though they're doing all the right things. So it matters what the order is. So again, we focus on the liver after we work on the gut. And the reason we focus on the liver next before we focus on hormones is many of your hormones are converted to their active form in the liver. So we want to make sure we're getting that base work done next. And then we look at measuring hormones, making sure those are in the right position so that your body can create what it needs to do so it can continue to heal and restore, because that's what hormones are really there for. I think about it like the money in the bank account. It's what pays the bills. But if you have toxicity, inflammation, infections, your gut's not functioning well, you don't have a proper microbiome, your hormones, no matter how much support we give you, are going to continue to be depleted. So I would rather get those things fixed first, remove what those stressors are, and then support your body to build on the hormone side so that that is functioning as well as possible.
And Dr. Dennis, I'm going to jump in there for just a second, because
Sure.
that's another critical piece of this program, I think, is that many of the people that I worked with, their first step was to kill, kill, kill. Well, I was so sick that when that first step of kill, kill, kill came in, it only made me sicker. And so healing the gut, working with the gut, really getting the gut to a place it can do some of that work first is so critical. So I wish I
Yeah.
would have known that tens of thousands of dollars ago, but now I do.
And again, your practitioner didn't do anything wrong. It was just their mindset was different. So,
Yes.
so many times when I work with practitioners, they come from either they're medical doctors that are functional medicine doctors that kind of knew that their system was a bit broken, wanted to try to find something better to be able to help people, but they still thought medically, which was
Correct.
go after the symptom. So
Correct.
they were thinking and trying to use holistic treatments and go in a different route than what the medical system was, but they still philosophically thought in the same way. So I always tell patients, it's like you could have a perfect primer and a perfect paint, but if you put on the paint first and then the primer, it doesn't look good. It could be the same exact thing, but if we go in the right order, now you're going to get a result that you're looking for, which is the ultimate result. So good feedback on that. So let's look at the food test. This is Dr. Kasey's food test. You can only imagine what you feel like when you get a food test back, because now you know what foods are actually creating problems for you and which ones are not. So one of the things which Dr. Kasey and I talked about, which makes this program so different, is it's very individualized. This is not a cookie cutter system. Anybody I bring through a program, it's going to be different than everybody else. So it takes a lot of time, a lot of energy. I'm actually going to have Dr. Kasey share about what she felt when she went through her food test and what her response was to this. But before I do that, I'm going to actually put up a schedule to our calendar. We only have 5 spots available. And one of the reasons that is it takes a ton of energy to work with a client and to do these things on an individualized approach. So I only have so many spots to be able to do these. If you go in and these spots are filled, just put full in the chat, and I will reach out to you personally, and I will find a time in the next few weeks to meet with you at a time I'm allowed to do that and have enough time. But yeah, I'm going to share that. I'm going to have Dr. Kasey share kind of what her thoughts were on the food. So go ahead. Go ahead.
So when I first got this test back, I was like, oh my gosh, like what am I going to be able to eat? Because Dr. Dennis is like, well, the goal here is perfection, right? You want to try to really eliminate all of the stuff that's in red and orange and yellow and really only focus on the green. So I'm not perfect, right? So I was not 100% with this. And I told Dr. Dennis last week, I was like, it's probably 90% or so because I travel a lot for work. So I just could not, be perfect all the time. So I still had fantastic results. So don't be overwhelmed. Yes, it's a lot. Do the absolute best that you can, but know that even if you're not perfect, you are still going to have really good results. But initially I was like, holy moly, I'm not going to do well with this. But I did the best that I could. Like I said, I was about 90% compliant with most of it, and I still had really awesome results. So don't let this scare you.
Yeah, and like we had talked about, like ultimately you're in control of your process, right? So when Dr. Kasey and I would talk, if she was like, "Oh, I was going away this weekend or I made a mistake here," like I'm not one that's going to bring judgment to the call. Like this is your process. I'm going to show up at the call and say, "Okay, well that kind of moved the finish line out a little bit. Here's the pieces we do to kind of accelerate that." But ultimately, you're in control. Just like when you're renovating your house, you can spend as much money, time, or energy as you want to, and you're the one that deals with the result at the end. It's not me that deals with that. So I'm just here to support you and tell you, here's the best thing that you could possibly do. That's the standard. Now we come up with a way to kind of get that as close as possible. And Dr. Kasey, like one of my favorite sayings is frustration is the gap between the experience and the expectation. If you have this expectation but you're showing up doing 20%, then I'm not going to tell you like, hey, you're doing a bad job. I'm going to say, hey, you're getting the result of what 20% looks like. If you want to get the result of 40, 60, 80, let's talk about what that looks like and try to accommodate that so that you get the result you're looking for. So it takes a lot of work on my side as well as the the patient that's going through it. And the most important thing I find is being authentic and honest about the process. Because if you show up and you're like, yeah, I'm doing all these things right, but you're not, now we can't move forward. But if you say, hey, Dr. Dennis, I'm doing 80% of what this is, these are the places I'm struggling. One, we can talk about mindset on trying to, or strategy on fixing the other 20, but we can also talk about encouraging that 80 and then building off of that. So I think that that is all the key, right?
Yeah. And the other piece too is like these are not off your list forever. It's just for a
Yes,
limited amount of
true.
time. So if you know, like we said, the bar is perfection, right? You want to do as 100% if you can, but it is time limited. So that's kind of what got me through. It's like, okay, for 30 days, I've got to be as clean as I possibly can with some of this, but knowing that you can add the stuff back in. It's just for this time period why your gut heals and gets to a place where it can do the rest of the program.
Yeah, and for me too, it comes down to mindset. It's like my best patients in the world are cancer patients because one, they think they're dying
Yeah.
and they will do whatever is necessary for them not to be dying. They will do chemo, they'll do radiation, they'll lose all their hair, they will change their diet, they will travel anywhere in the world, they will pay anything to do anything to get well. The good thing about many of my patients is they're not in that position yet. So when we say like, hey, we need to remove some of your foods for a year, it's hard in mindset to take that because you're one, you're doing well, so you don't want to make changes. But two, it's like it's a very small sacrifice compared to what the sacrifice looks like if you do get into that position of serious disease, right? And I think looking at it in terms of a time frame and saying like, "Hey, I'm working on this and I'm moving the bar up rather than needing to move the bar up," is a great place to be. That's what we would want for our children all the time. But sometimes it's hard to make those decisions for ourselves. So I understand that. So let's look at your stool test. So here's a stool test we do in the office. And something I love about this test is it looks at two things. Well, it looks at a lot more things like absorption and other things. But what we're looking at the screen right now is it shows you what infections that you may have inside of your digestive tract or what infections are inside of your digestive tract and how that we can start to address those. But it also shows us your good bacteria. And if you've ever used like an antibiotic or if there's something inside that's killing that good bacteria, what does that look like? So we can build up the good and we can start to kill the bad. So anything you want to add on this one, Doc?
No, so I guess when I first saw that, I'm like, oh my God, I have Clostridia in my gut. But there are good guys. There are good Clostridia guys. So,
Yep.
so don't be shocked sometimes when you see this stuff and go, oh.
Yeah. So again, it gives you this information and the next slide right here that I'll share. The other thing that the lab does is they take any of those infections that are present and they grow them in a petri dish. And then they use natural treatments that I've come up with the lab to tell me exactly how we can pinpoint and target treatment for that. So you can see with Dr. Kasey, we could use like uva ursi and silver or grapefruit seed extract. And we actually formulated a specific way to make it even more effective so that we're getting those treatments into the gut and treating these things. And then we see these changes over time. But you're not guessing. So when you're investing money now into this, you know that these are the exact killers that are going to kill the exact things inside your digestive tract instead
And
of
that's
just
so
guessing.
important. That's so important to me. At least for me, it was super important because have you ever been to the doctor and you have a sinus infection or something and they just throw an antibiotic at you and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, right? And so I was like, I've always said, what are the specific things that I need that are specific to me? And so when I saw this, I'm like, awesome, this is great. So we know exactly what we need. There's no extra money, there's no a zillion supplements, there's no spending, extra time, effort, and money on things because we're guessing at what might help it.
Yeah, and the other wild thing from what you just said is you wonder if it's working, right?
Yes.
The antibiotic. What
Yeah,
we know is when the antibiotic goes in, even if it's not working, it is creating damage.
absolutely.
So there's a compromise whenever you're doing a medical treatment. So we want to make sure we're making that as efficient as possible and then building up again the good while we're working on the bad. So there's always a guaranteed problem when you use a pharmaceutical. There's always a side effect, there's always a concern associated with it. So we want to make sure if we are using those or natural remedies that we're maximizing the benefit, and we can do that through things like testing, and we look at these things. So again, a lot goes into coming up with this customized approach, and that's what gives us the great results we have. So the next three slides I want to go over are just some multivitamins. Lots of times patients or supplements that I take on a regular basis, lots of times patients say, hey, I'm not ready to do a plan, or I'm not ready to do something, but I want to do something for myself. If you are here today and you want to order any of these supplements that I'm going through, just write 10% in the chat. And what I will do is I will send you a full script account, which is my online dispensary. And I will send you these supplements we're talking about, and you can order one or all of them. But you will get a 10% discount on your first order for anything that you want to get through the store. So this is a multivitamin that I use for myself and my family. It's called Catalin. You take 3 caps a day. This has 320 capsules in it, or 360 capsules. It's a 4-month supply. Comes out to $52.20 per bottle at your 10% discount. So it's about $15 or less than $15 a month. One of the reasons I love Catalin is it is a whole food multivitamin. And anytime the science has ever come up with like another vitamin or nutrient that they find beneficial that they start adding to synthetic supplements, they always test Catalin, and Catalin always already has what those benefits are. So it's a tremendous multivitamin for you and your family. It's something that you can take that's just going to help you get your multivitamin support and things that you might not be getting in your food source. The next one is Pro Omega 2000. This comes from a company called Nordic Naturals. It's a fish oil. If you are having fish about 3 times per week, less important to get a supplement like this. But if you do not like to get fish into your diet, this is a great thing to support overall heart health, cardiovascular system. You take 2 gels per day. It's a 2-month supply. This is $81 per bottle. So you're talking like $40 or so per month if you're taking this. And something I always tell patients is with a fish oil, if you are taking a fish oil, one of the things you want to do, and again, with all supplements or everything I recommend, is make sure it's good, high quality. So one of the things you can do with your fish oil, and I've done this with this product and it passes the test, is you can take your fish oil, put it in the freezer overnight. If when you pull it out in the morning, it's frozen, it's not a good quality fish oil. Fish oil should not freeze in the freezer overnight. So that's a test that you can do for yourself. And then the last one's vitamin D. So I recommend, especially if you are in the Northern Hemisphere, 2 caps per day in the winter and fall, 1 capsule per day, summer and spring. This is 5,000 IUs per capsule. So you're talking about 5 or 10,000 IUs per day. And this is a 1 to 2 month supply, depending on the time of year. And it's $30 or so for a bottle with your 10% discount. So you're talking like 15 to 20 bucks a month to be able to do this. Out of all 3 of the supplements I just talked about, I think vitamin D is the most important. And if you were only to add one thing, this would be the thing I added. And I wanted to share this chart with you here because so many times when medical recommendations are given specifically to supplementation, they base it off of what the medical literature says only. So if you look at this bottom part here, you'll see rickets. Rickets is what vitamin D is, prescribed for from the medical side. And as long as you're at 20 for your measurement, they're going to say that you're fine. So if you're over 20, they're going to say your vitamin D level is okay. But what I want you to see is if your vitamin D level is at 40, you have a 35% less chance of all cancers combined. If you are at 52, you have an 83% less chance of breast cancer. And you can look at the rest of the chart. I'm not going to go through all of it, but ideally, when I work with a client, I like their vitamin D level somewhere between 60 and 80 because that's not only going to support overall hormone health, but it's going to decrease so many other symptoms as well as supporting the immune system, helping to fight COVID. Type 1 diabetes is decreased by like 60% if it's up to 54%. So, multiple sclerosis. I mean, falls for women, fractures. I mean, these are like big deals. So if you are not on a vitamin D, I would recommend getting the vitamin D. The one I'm recommending is the best one that I've found. It has K there to help with absorption, but the key is having enough vitamin D in there. And vitamin D is not something you're going to get from your food. It's what you get from sunlight, and we're not getting enough sunlight these days. We're working inside, and like I said, even people like my Florida clients, like my mother is in Florida. She is outside all the time in the sun, in good sun, and she still supplements with vitamin D. So that's a big deal to look at for there. Anything you want to share on any of that, Doc?
I was just going to say, so I live in Florida too. And I happen to have, and I know Dr. Dennis does this testing if you ever want to do this, but I have a genetic mutation on my VDR TAC gene that makes me not retain the vitamin D. So when I was at my sickest with the mold, my vitamin D was like 10. So I
Mhm.
have to supplement, even though I'm in Florida and I'm outside all the time, I still supplement to make sure it's at that optimal level.
Yeah, and what people don't think about too is that those bad things that you're dealing with, like the mold in your body, dealing with them, that is like the money we talk about. So if you don't have that and your body is going through, let's say the process to get rid of it is A, B, C in that order, and B is vitamin D is necessary for B, all of a sudden A can no longer go to C. But you start adding in that vitamin D, now your body can continue with that process and not get backed up. So it's necessary you have these components to be able to do these things. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the hormone test that we did with Dr. Kasey. This is kind of the last part of the program we work with patients because again, we want to get rid of all the initial factors that are depleting this first, but then we want to build up the hormones. And the reason I want to show you this before we look at the testing is I want you to realize when you're working with a practitioner how complicated this process is. So if you're not dealing with a practitioner that one you think cares about you and two is taking the time to look at it, what I do when I look at a client's case and I look at their hormones is I look at how every single one of these processes interact and how to encourage the proper ones to be doing what they're supposed to be doing without impacting the other ones negatively. So it takes a lot of energy to figure out the exact way to do this and then watch how the body's responding and then make proper adjustments to make sure that's moving properly. The other thing I want to show you on this is so many times clients will come to me that have high cholesterol, for example, but also have hormonal issues. And their practitioner's first goal is to say, let's put you on a statin or something to lower your cholesterol. I want you to see cholesterol as the main source up here for all of your sex and steroid hormones. So if your cholesterol is high, that may be an indication that your body's trying to make more hormones. And if you cut that off by taking a medication, it doesn't fix the problem. It just changes what your labs look like. And that is not the goal. The goal is to get to the underlying cause and make sure we're addressing all of these issues. So I'm going to show you Dr. Kasey's Dutch test. And this is just one of the many pages we look at on the Dutch test. But here was the Dutch test we looked at, and I'll get any thoughts you have first, and then I'll share kind of a couple spots that I looked at on it.
Sure. So the one thing that I want to share with people too. So when I first came to Dr. Dennis, one of my main symptoms, even though I felt, I was getting better, I still had mood swings. I still had what I would call crushing fatigue, where I would have one day that was great. And then the next day I'm like, oh, I'm so tired. And so this, I think, really helped explain some of that. And so when we looked at this and I was able to just supplement a few different things and get me back to like a normal rhythm, all that crushing fatigue is gone, that, mood, lability is gone. And so this Dutch was really the key to that piece to say, okay, what's going on with your hormones that we need to tweak, just a little bit to get you back to what I would call a normal place.
Yeah, and when I look at the Dutch test, the first things I'm looking for um, are not usually what the patient's looking for, which is like energy, sleep, skin, aging, just overall well-being, sex drive, focus, energy. Those are not the things I'm looking at first. When I look at this, I'm looking at one, is the body have all of the resources to be able to heal and recover? And two, is it having a metabolic pathway that's leading to potential cancer in the future? So hormones play a huge role in that as well. So when I look at these pathways, I'm making sure if one of those things are in place, we're doing everything we can to support it, to decrease and minimize risk of cancer, and then increase support to make sure the body is functioning properly. The side effect and the benefit of that is energy gets better, sleep gets better, sex drive gets better. If you're struggling with weight gets better. One of the things a lot of people don't think about, especially as you're transitioning into menopause, is the adrenal glands need to pick up for what the ovaries were doing for most of your life. And if you've been stressed, whether that's physical, chemical, or emotional, the adrenal glands can't pick up for that. So what happens is two things. One, throws off the thyroid. And if you have a lot of friends that are in menopause or struggling with health, thyroid is usually something they struggle with. And usually they're just medicated for it and they don't get to the root cause. And the other one is fat tissue will actually create estrogen. So your body will actually start making and holding on to fat tissue to offset what these sides are. So what you can do is you can start to be in a position where you're gaining weight, you're frustrated about it, you think it's a menopause issue, you start to do all these supplements or try to exercise more, and that fat tissue is actually there to keep you alive and keep you functioning. And if you don't get it fixed, look, the body will always outwork you. You can work off the fat. As soon as you stop or look at something that could gain fat, your body will gain fat back because it needs to create that estrogen. So that's what we look at when we look at this, is just making sure those hormones are in balance. So the last thing I want to share, and then I'll let Dr. Kasey close up. But look, order any of the supplements we talked about. I didn't see anybody say 10% yet, but you can go onto our website and you can order any of the supplements without the 10% discount. There's 20,000 supplements on there. You can get whatever supplements and add yourself to our portal. You're welcome to do that. Schedule a 45-minute call with me. So that offer, and I'm gonna share it again once Dr. Kasey's speaking, but just get on my calendar. It's a 45-minute call with me. You and I can talk about exactly what's going on, be more individualized to you. When you schedule that call, you'll see that there's an application you must fill out. That gives me information so that we have something specific to talk about on that visit, so I know exactly what to address. And anybody that schedules tonight, you will get a $400 credit towards your care plan, that you can use towards testing or whatever you would like to help you go through this process. So I'm so excited you guys are all here. I'll let Dr. Kasey share kind of any encouragement that she can share on her side, and then we'll close up.
So same thing. I just want to thank people for being here, and I will tell you that's a great deal. I didn't get that deal when I worked with Dr. Dennis. So it's a really good deal. And like I said, his program is very comprehensive. I healed more in the time with him in the shorter amount of time at a significant cost savings than anybody else I worked with. So hands down. And just so y'all know, like I'm on here just to support him because there's no financial anything going back and forth. He knows what he's doing. He's really good at it. And I am better today because of the program I went through. So
Cool.
um,
I love
what else
that.
can I say?
Well, I would say this, the last thing that we were talking about that I think we can leave with is, one of the things we talked about is we spend $3, $4, $5, $8,000 on a lot of things, right? There's nothing more important than your health. Like I was telling you, I'm planning a trip to Disney with my family in February, it's going to be at least $10,000. It's going to be smiles, fun, and a couple rides, and then it's going to be over in a week, and we'll have memories. Awesome. But when you're sick, or if you're trying to prevent yourself from being sick, the most expensive thing in the world is not being well. Not only just from the cost that it's going to take, but you not being able to be the mother, the wife, the employee, losing your job. Like, it becomes really expensive once you lose your health. So it is an investment that I would encourage for anybody to make. And again, I just want to be here to support you to do that in the most cost effective way possible. So, Dr. Kasey, thank you for being here.
Welcome.
And we'll talk soon. Thanks, everyone, for showing up. Have a wonderful day.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Doc.
Welcome.